Hello, my name is Caroline Nettle and my website is spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk, and this is video number 4 in the series of recovering from addictions, and today we are going to be addressing the subject of the struggles. Now, I'm not sure that anyone goes into addiction recovery expecting it to be a walk in the park or under any illusion that it's going to be easy. But I do have to say from my experience, it's probably one of the most challenging journeys I've ever been on. In as much as, you know, an addict will have spent their entire life hiding from the truth, and then recovery is all about uncovering the truth. And in the beginning, some of that is about looking back and accepting and coming to terms with the people that you may have hurt in your addiction, the car crash scenes that you may have left behind you, any damage that you've done to your own physical or psychological or spiritual health in your addictions, and just looking at ways to come to terms with that and move through it. Excuse me, so that you're not in a place of blame or criticism of self, or not continually perpetuating the self-hatred. One of the statistics that I heard very recently, and this is, I think, very apt that we're addressing this in the struggle video, is that, and I believe these statistics are from America, I watched a TED talk about recovery, and they said 3,000 people die every day from alcohol-related diseases, and that figure is incredibly high. But the figure that she sort of quoted that really shook me to the core is only 10% of alcoholics seek recovery or treatment, and of those 80 to 90% relapse. So if you just let that sink in for a little while, there's a very, very few people who make it in recovery. Why is this? I think it's probably too difficult sometimes. When you stop drinking, you discover why you drank in the first place, and I know that sent me a little bit bonkers, shall we say that. I spent 9 months in my secondary treatment centre. So the first treatment centre was to put the drug down. My drug of choice that we're talking about here is alcohol, and the second one was to learn how to live without it. And for me, that included masses of therapy, group work, just really allowing me to break down completely and then rebuild completely. Now, once again, I want to stress that because I went through treatment, 2 treatment centres, and it took the best part of a year for me within those organisations, doesn't mean to say that that's what you've got to do. Many people make it in the rooms who literally use AA and that program and get well. I just knew I couldn't. For me, that wasn't a possibility. Once I'd put down my biggest coping mechanism, so the thing that, what I loved about getting drunk was that I got out of my head, literally. So I would drink very, very fast until I was floating, and then I would relax and I could get on with my evening. And it switched off my brain, and the chronic self-hatred and the constantly beating myself up for that moment in time, and then I woke up in the morning and did the same the next day. So, and yes, I can look back and see some people that I have harmed, most importantly myself. I can see that. I wish somehow I treated my body with a little bit more respect, and you know, I'm in my 50s now and starting to feel that perhaps I will start paying for it, but I did come out with my life, and that I am grateful for every day, because I do know, you know, a lot of people who didn't make it through, and that in itself is really sobering. Okay, so the struggles of putting down your drug of choice are that, for me, I needed to unlearn who I was. So I needed to totally undress the image that I had of myself, the belief systems that I had of myself, and really, really come to comprehend that my brain lied to me all the time. It told me that I needed to get drunk in order to be able to cope. It told me that everybody hated me. It told me that I was just worthless and useless and all those lovely things. And because of those belief systems, I had built up a series of coping mechanisms, of behaviours, and just gradually over time learning that they were destructive and not useful in adult, and learning, you know, for me in my 40s this was, learning how to relate to people in a way that was truthful. I mean, that was really challenging because I'd been such a chronic people pleaser. I mean, wow, the ways I bent myself out of shape to get your approval, to get you to like me, to, you know, just to please you so that you would love me. It's frightening now looking back at how much I gave myself away. And what I have learned is when you're on the receiving end of a chronic people pleaser, it feels uncomfortable because you know that they're not being their authentic self. They're desperately looking for something. And I think that's the word that I would use for my pre-recovery days, was the word desperate. I was just so lacking in self-love and self-approval, and I would try and find it any which way. One thing that's coming to mind immediately when I'm talking about this is I would go to somebody's house and they'd have some really nice orange cushions, for example, and I'd absolutely need that. And I'd go to the next person's house and they'd have a really nice flower pot, for example, and I'd really have to have that. And so I felt like I had to be like someone in order to be okay myself, which really makes no sense to me at all, because now I know who I am, and I've learned and constructed a much more authentic self. One, I'm a lot more resilient. Two, I'm not so needy at all, thank goodness. But three, I also know that it's okay to be different. That was something I really didn't know. I used to beat everybody else up with my opinion because I was taught that, you know, knowing everything, which is clearly impossible, but knowing when I knew enough I'd be okay. So we would have chronic arguments. I mean, really, in our family, I come from a very intellectual family, and your intellect is the most important thing in your armoury. And now I just like to allow people to have different opinions, and I love learning different ways of doing things, and I'm really open to disagreeing in an amicable way. Before, if you didn't agree with me, I took it really personally, which clearly is stupid because there's 7 billion people on the planet and not all of them are going to agree with me. So I've learned that now, and now I have a genuine passion for learning and for, you know, discovering other people and how fascinating people are, and all of that. Instead of having this completely black and white vision of the world and who I was. So that has been, it was really difficult for me because I was so in my head and my mind and was completely dominated by fear and loathing and all these things. And now the only way I can say it is that has gone. I mean, you know, I have worked really, really hard, but I don't have a need to have you agree with me or understand me or even like me. That's really quite new. So that's great. So you unlearn who you are, then you have to find out who you are. And for me, that was as basic, and I really find this embarrassing to say, but, you know, in the quest for transparency, what is your favourite colour, Caroline? No idea, because I'd spent so long liking what you like and what you like and what you like and what you like that, you know, I was a little bit like, I don't know. And you know, what do you actually believe? And we did lots and lots of great exercises where, you know, you list all men should ... and then you write down all the different things that I believe that all men should: take the trash out, drive the car, whatever it is. You know, maybe I don't believe that anymore, but you have to write down exactly what comes up, and then you've got to draw a line down the page and hear, what do my parents believe? That was a really good one to me. So I had swallowed my parents' belief hook, line and sinker. And I'm not my parents. I had to really say, okay, so I don't believe that because it's not necessarily true for me. But what do I believe? So it was a really, really interesting time of inquiry. I just wandered around, you know, and that took me months and years probably to find out exactly what I believed. But when I did find out what I believed, then I knew who I was, you know, and I had some really interesting aha moments. I'm quite shy. Who'd have guessed it? When I was drinking, that's the very last thing you would have thought of me. I was such a party animal. But yeah, I can really struggle with social anxiety sometimes. But now I honour that, and I know who I am, and I put things in place so that it doesn't impact my life too much. Okay. So the struggle with abstinence, I want to talk to that just a little bit, because for every person that will be different. For me, I found not drinking relatively easy, in that the cravings went away quite rapidly for me, which was unusual, I was told, and very fortunate. I'm very lucky in that respect. What I miss still, after 12 years, is the ability to get out of my brain really, really quickly. There's nothing else that does that for me quite like alcohol. What I struggle with, and even now this can be a real trigger for me, and I can't tell you why, but if the sun's shining and we're sitting having a picnic or something on the grass and then 2 glasses clink, that particular thing, and especially if it's behind me for some reason, really makes me want to have a drink of alcohol. I can't tell you why. In the beginning it would trigger me and really trigger me, but now it's just like, oh, there I go again. I don't know why that particular thing would trigger me. I discovered last year in the fire that I am truly an alcoholic, because having not thought about alcohol for probably nearly a decade, the thing that I needed, like desperately with every cell in my body, was a drink. But not one drink, you know, like I needed to numb the pain. I was in shock. It was horrendous. I just watched everything I love burning to the ground. Luckily, you know, again, I'll say this, I don't know if someone had put a bottle of wine or a bottle of vodka in front of me, whether or not I would have drunk it. I like to think the answer to that is no, but I can't guarantee that. And so, yeah, luckily the people that I was with, I had been, in full disclosure, I am an alcoholic. I don't mind you drinking in front of me. So as soon as they saw that I was in shock, I noticed all the bottles getting tucked away in cupboards and things. The thing I do know about alcoholics is I don't think it would have mattered. If I really had needed that drink, I would have walked to the local pub, or, you know, I would have got my fix somehow. Luckily, I think I was in shock and my legs weren't working properly. So that was a really good reminder to me that I'm only ever one drink away from a complete relapse. And the sad thing about this disease, I don't know why it's like this, but, you know, usually people go into recovery because their addiction, their drinking or their sex or whatever it is they're addicted to has got so out of hand that they know that they're on rock bottom. And I understand from all the scientists that if I was to go back to drinking, I would go back to the very worst that I'd got to, which in the end was pretty, ugly. So I'm super grateful that I am in recovery, and yeah, I'm grateful that I haven't succumbed to relapsing, and I have lost a lot of friends who I've met in the rooms and outside of the rooms who didn't quite make it, and that has always, you know, made me feel there, but for the grace of God go I. I am really aware that I have a fatal disease, and I have to be mindful of that every day. Okay, I can see that I've run to 15 minutes. This video I feel was probably one of the most important ones, because I think if you're on the outside looking at a recovering alcoholic, it's quite difficult to know what we're going through. Just to say, the best way you can support an addict in recovery is to allow them to do their process, even if you don't understand it, don't agree with it. And if it means that they can't come back into the family or go back into a group of friends, it's just because they're trying to keep themselves safe. And clearly, if you take an addict out of a toxic environment, for example, you get him sober and then you put him back into that environment which engendered the drinking and the whatever it was, then, you know, the chances of relapse are pretty high, I would say. And usually addictions aren't just one person in the family. Usually there's addictions running all the way through. They may not look the same. There's a whole other video I could do about that, but what I'm trying to say is, if you love someone who is going through recovery, or you're trying to go through recovery yourself, give them loads of space, ask them what they need. It is a long-term strategy. It's not something you get recovered and then that's it for the rest of the day. I'm still working on myself 12 years later. I'm super grateful that I have a group of people around me who understand what I've been through, and don't judge me and just listen when I'm struggling and so on. That's a real gift. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. I would like to say that next one is the last video, and we're going to do the blessings. So recovering from addictions, the blessings, because absolutely my life has transformed, and I really want to share that with you so that we end the series with hope. And yeah, that's great. So once again, my website is spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk. if you're struggling with anything at all, just get in touch. We can have a chat about how I can help you. Really hope this video has been useful, and sending out lots of love. Okay, bye.